OMAKASE, the life and words of author M. Karen. If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a brief introduction. My name is Max. I write books for a living. My pronouns are they, them. And if you are unfamiliar with the format, here's how this podcast goes. The podcast is broken into 3 segments. First is my week, where I talk about my creative process, what I've been reading, consuming, and enjoying in media. The second segment is viewer questions. Every week, I tackle 2 questions sent to my Tumblr page, to my YouTube, to my Twitter, to my email. Links to those in the description down below. I tackle viewer questions. Today, we're going to be talking about what do I look for in a good title for a story? And the big one, how do you know if you're meant to be a writer? I always like to give you a technical question and an inspirational one, and that's the one for this week. I got a very touching email from a viewer, and that's what we're going to talk about in the question segment. The last part of the show is the prompt, where I give you a bizarre, weird, strange story idea for you to think about. And if you have the time, work on. Today, we're going to talk about that sibling you never knew. But before we get to all of that other stuff, I need to give you 3 items of housekeeping today. The first is that the track which you hear at the beginning and at the end of the show is titled Dream of Green by the OC Jazz Collective. Link below. In the description, you can also find links to supporting me on Patreon and how you can treat me to a cup of coffee. The last item of housekeeping, and one that I am most likely gonna make formal because my wife has been telling me that I have to say this, because it is part of having a podcast and all that jazz. If you really enjoy this podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on iTunes. That is one of the ways in which this podcast can continue to grow. So if you really enjoy it, please consider leaving a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, share with your friends. My wife has yelled at me because I don't do this enough. So there you go. If you really like this show, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you. And now, with all of that stuff out of the way, let's dive right into the first segment of the show, my week. Last week, on episode 32, we had a pajama party special. Very casual. Today, it's Business Max once again. Business as usual, but not as casual. Okay, I was I was trying some clever wordplay there. That's why I revise my writing. That's why I revise all of those unfunny jokes out of every one of my first drafts. That's what happens. But anyhow, more on that topic later. If you're wondering, Max, how has your writing been? Max, what is it like being down there in the rewriting trenches? And I'm going to tell you real quick that it's the darn same story as last week. I am rewriting through this novel. I am pushing along. I am adding like 3,000 to 4,000 words every single session to this novel. And you may be thinking, Max, that's a lot. Yeah, I thought this novel was long enough as it is, but it turns out I always forget to mention something. I was talking with my lovely spouse that I apparently, Max from the past, Max who wrote the first draft of this novel, apparently completely forgot to add one particular scene to the story. It wasn't a pivotal scene, but it was a very important scene, and it needed to be there, and it needed to be written from scratch. So I've been working on that, having fun. For my timeline, because, whenever you're listening to this podcast, you're actually becoming a time traveler, because I'm in the past, you're in the future. Let me know how everything turns out. I'm in the past. A couple of days ago, my lovely spouse and I celebrated Valentine's Day together, going out on a little date. It was really cute. Is this at all related to writing? Is there going to be a little storytelling anecdote related to all this? No, I just had a really good time. I've had a really nice week, a mix of getting some rest, finally, revising lots, and spending time with my wife. It's been nice. If you are a member of the gaming Discord and you're like, Max, why haven't we had game night? Well, my schedule has just not worked out. So you may be wondering, Max, we are in the middle of your weekly update, and so far there's been no talking about writing. Is that a sign of some incoming pattern? I really don't have much to talk about. Like, I have all these details about my novel, but I am not gonna tell you. I would love to tell you about that scene, and this thing, and that thing, but it's just not in my character to just reveal all those details. Mostly because they're all gonna get changed anyway, so it's not a big deal. I want to talk about storytelling for a second, okay? And it's gonna involve something, but I want you to just tag along, okay? We're gonna make it through this journey together, okay? Whenever I am consuming media, particularly books, novels, and film, the storytelling medium that is ultimately all about the story. You know, I sometimes play narrative video games where the story takes more of a center spot, center position. It is more in the center of the experience. But games are ultimately about experiencing something. So story is not pivotal. When it comes to the narrative mediums, shows, TV, movies, in those situations, the story is everything. The story is what holds everything together. And as you know, I've done editing work. I do it. I'm doing it right now. I've done it professionally. So whenever I'm consuming media, I am in editing mode because I want to see how well executed the story is. I look for the patterns, I find inconsistencies, and I am constantly questioning what is happening in the story. Is this exhausting, Max? Sometimes it is. But it's ultimately fun, because it means that every time I'm experiencing media, I'm questioning it. I'm looking for the good and the bad. I don't want to give you the impression that whenever, I put on a movie, we are just constantly just judging every part of it, tearing it apart, you could say. Because it's not really about bringing that story down, it's just simply analyzing what is in it. So why are we talking about the way in which I consume media? Well, recently my wife and I, and hold on, listen to me, my wife and I finished watching an anime from last season, SSSS Gridman. And if you know what that looks like, if you have seen an ad for it and you're thinking to yourselves, Max, isn't that a kid's show? No. Isn't that a show that just wants to sell action figures? No. I'm going to put on a timer for 2 minutes and I'm going to talk in broad strokes about my experience. Because whenever I'm watching anime, let's be real, most anime is not very well written for a myriad of reasons. And I hardly found anything to complain about in SSSS Gridman. I found nothing. I got to have that weird experience where I got to just enjoy it. I was looking for things and I found nothing. Every single detail was used effectively. No detail was wasted. The writing was concise. It wasn't perfect. The writing faltered in a couple of points. There are a couple of things in there that I didn't like. But objectively speaking, every thread closed up. Every single character had their moment. Every single element that appeared in the opening sequence came back into the story, was a meaningful part of the story, wasn't just a cool thing thrown into the opening because it looked cool. Everything came back around. And that is good, effective writing. It felt effortless. Whenever I'm giving someone feedback or whenever I'm reading a friend's writing, I tell them, I want nothing but to read through this book and tell you that I have nothing to complain about. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes I do read through a friend's work and I go, this is your best work yet. You nailed it. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Because writing is very complex. And one single person can't keep all of those details in their mind. That's why you sometimes need a second point of view, feedback, beta readers, and an editor. Someone to help you look at those things from a different point of view. And let me tell you, those moments when I get to enjoy the show, when I, the nitpickiest of nitpickiest people, can actually just sit down and enjoy it and see the flow of the story, the little sentences that the writers snuck in at the beginning. When we finished watching episode 12, it's a 12-episode series, Kitty and I were going back and forth about like, oh, remember that thing that they said on episode 3? And we would actually go through the episodes and rewind and find it. And realize, oh, this plot element was established all the way here. I never rewatch things. I am too busy. I want to go back and rewatch all of those 12 episodes to see just how far back everything was established. Delightful, concise, clear writing. I have gone over my 2 minutes, but it's fine. If you are a fan of anime, I cannot recommend SSSS Gridman anymore. If you grew up in the 90s and you happen to have seen a TV show titled Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, that is cyber with an S, by the way, you may want to give it you may want to just give it a little glance. It is... Okay, my wife and I are doing a video on it, so she just shut up now. I liked it. If you don't like anime, I can't convince you to watch it because it's still anime. So there is that. Putting that over there, you can tune back in. I got a very small question in my email, and it's not big enough that I can just have a whole segment on it. So I'm just going to talk about it right now before we move over into the actual questions for the show. Someone wanted to know, hey Max, I want to start a routine. Do you have any tips? Now, it may seem as though I can just talk about this for like 20 minutes, and I probably could if I didn't have other much more monumental questions to go over in the next segment. But the thing is this. If you wanna, especially if, this is gonna go up near the end of February, your goals for January probably didn't pan out as you expected because real life happens, and you may be thinking to yourselves, all these habits, all these things I want to do, it's all slipping past me. Maybe a routine will help. And I can tell you that routine has been the number one thing that has helped me stay consistent. But I have to be entirely honest and also admit that the biggest pitfall of having a hard routine is that you are not flexible. Life will happen. Something... Don't mind me, I became 12 there for a second. Something will happen. Something will get in the way. And I would rather inspire you to have a soft routine. A routine that is based on things that you do, as opposed to time where you do things. Let me explain. Probably the worst routine, and one that I had for years, and I regret having become so rigid. One of the worst routines you can have is a routine where you have alarms on your phone telling you when everything is supposed to happen. Wake up at 7 a.m., wash your face and dress up by 7:30. 8 o'clock, clean the kitchen and make breakfast. 8:30, be done with breakfast, drink all of your coffee, and sit down to plan the day. That rigidness based on time, it is absolutely a time bomb. Someday, something will get in the way, you're gonna get sick or something, and breaking that streak will just make you feel like a complete failure. And for no reason. And for no reason, honestly. I lived like that for a very long time, and I always felt like I was out of time. Like I was always behind on everything. It was a kind of torture that was ultimately over nothing. I moved over to a flexible or soft routine where instead of focusing on get this done at this time, get this done at this time, I would rather just say, when I get up, I do this, then I do that, then I do that. Wake up, freshen up, put on clothes, clean, make breakfast, sit down. No matter what happens, that's how my mornings begin. No matter what gets in the way, that's how my mornings begin. It's just a slight change in mentality, but sometimes that is all that you need in order to change, to improve. Just a change in perspective, looking at things from a different point of view. I can ramble for way longer, but for the dear writerly viewer out there, and for you listening at home, if you want to Oh, I hope you can't hear that. The police are after me. They heard about me talking about anime again. The anime police is out there. What I want to say is that if you want to start a routine, I want to inspire you to have a soft routine. One where you focus on tasks, not time. I know time is limited, but if you're only looking at the clock, you will be miserable. You know what that feeling is like. You remember being at school, looking at the clock on the wall, waiting for class to be over. It's misery. That's no way to spend your life. Focus on getting things done, because that way, even if you have a really bad morning, even if you're feeling really bad about something, or end up sleeping in because of whatever reason, your whole morning is not ruined. Because you can still get up, take care of that task, and then the next, and then the next, and you move on from there. That right there is a trick. I really blitzed through that, so if anyone wants me to go into greater detail, send me an email. Link in the description down below. Alright. I've rambled enough. Thank you for listening. Before we tackle the questions for the day, the official questions for the day, let me tell you about the people who make this show possible. My podcast, my videos, my books, they're all here thanks to my patrons. The people who are directly supporting me through patreon.com/mkaren. Depending on what you pledge, you can get cool perks. $1 a month gets you to listen to these early. And I think that's a pretty cool deal. You also get to listen to the workshop a month in advance. Depending on what you pledge, you get cooler and cooler perks. Such as a shout out. I want to give a shout out to some of my most generous patrons, beginning with Hero Song. Hero Song is writing LGBT plus positive novels. You can find them over at smashwords.com. Do a quick search for Hero Song. Rival Moonlight! Rival Moonlight has a DeviantArt page. You can find out more about his writing and his art over at deviantart.com/Rival Moonlight. That's one word. Rival Moonlight. And a little shout out to some of my other super generous patrons. Solmuse, Lishadra, Lacey, Irina Phoenix, A. Howard, Angela, Polly Craftwell, Amelia, Alyssa Dudley, Heather is Writing, Nicola, Brenda, Pat Eidson, Kristen Lofton, and Synexia. I was about to do a drum roll, but then I realized it would sound terrible on the microphone. So, hey, thank you so much for your support, you guys. And everyone else pledging at least $1, don't worry, you're gonna get a shout out at the end. Now, it's time for a little plot twist. We're gonna talk about how to know if you're meant to be a writer right now. I made it sound like you were gonna have to wait until the second question. Guess what? Plot twist. We're gonna talk about it right now. A dear writerly friend reached out to me and asked me a question that I've heard before. They told me a little bit about themselves, about their struggle with writing, about their dreams. It was a very touching message. And in a way, it was one that I was familiar with. This is not my first time talking about this particular topic. There is a chance I might have already talked about it on this podcast, but listen. This podcast is not supposed to be a library of all the questions I've ever covered. It's a living podcast. If I don't remember talking about it, I'll talk about it again. It doesn't hurt to have little reminders. Heaven knows I am pretty bad sometimes at learning something. Sometimes it takes a couple of times to pick it up. So, if you have heard me talk about this, tag along still. It doesn't hurt to be reminded of this. Is there a way to know if you're meant to be a writer? Is there a way? I find that questions like these often arrive at the beginning of a journey. Writing is hard, and writing is a long journey. Sometimes you can look at your ideas, at your outline, and feel really confident. But once you find yourself before the blank page, the terror arrives. A terror that we are all familiar with. Yes, even those writers that you look up to, they face it too. It's hard for everyone. Though it may seem like it's hardest for you right now. And that's fair. The first time is the hardest, because you're discovering everything. Sometimes I get a question like this when a writer is deep in their journey. They've been doing this for years, but they can't shake off that awful feeling in their chest that maybe, just maybe they're not meant to be a writer. And that's a curious question. Is there a way for us to know? Sometimes I have found myself answering this question face to face. I've talked about this with dear friends, with colleagues. There's always been this sense of hopelessness. And I feel like these last couple of years have been pretty hard for pretty much everyone I know. So questions like this emerge. Not just questions about writing, but questions about life, you know? Am I at the right place? Is this where I am meant to be? Have I missed my chance? Am I in the right relationship? Is this career the one that I want to be in for the rest of my life? Those questions ultimately all share the same root. And I don't think they are bad questions to ask. I think it is important to be able to look at oneself, to look inwards, to be able to reflect and ask oneself. And yeah, I know. We're in there. We're getting in there. We're going to have a capital R real talk. This podcast is rated R for real. We're going to have that real conversation because this is rooted in the same thing, you know? I always try not to just give you a band-aid to just fix the problem now, but help you find your own way. So that later, when you're on your own, you can't reach me, you can figure out things for yourself. Not because I don't like to help, but because I can't always be there. How do you know if you're meant to be a writer? I am going to use that as the placeholder for basically any other question that you can ask yourself regarding your life. Is this the right career for me? Am I happy in this relationship? All of those big, horrible, scary questions. Is there a way to know if you're meant to be a writer? And I think that the question itself is flawed. Especially the fate part. Because if you were to change the phrasing of some of those other questions from, am I happy in this relationship to, am I meant to be with him? That changes things a lot. I don't want to come off a little strong here, but I don't think fate matters. Because fate is what we see looking back. Fate are the patterns that we notice once time has passed. Once we can look back to our history and notice little elements, the little rippling effects. In the act of living, we cannot know that. So that right there is off the table. Are you fated to be a writer? Are you meant to be a writer? I don't think the meaning or fatefulness of that matters at all. The question that I would turn around and ask you is, do you want to be a writer? Do you want to be a writer? 7 words, and yet it is also a scary question. A part of me wants to divert the conversation away from the ultimate goal, maybe to soften the blow. I don't know. Maybe it won't even be a blow at all. I think I should just be brave and just tell you. It doesn't matter what you think or don't think you're meant to be. It actually doesn't matter. Life is short. Life is fleeting. Life escapes us, trickling past the space in between our fingers like sand. Life is a sand clock with no top, one you cannot flip, and it is dripping, slipping, getting by us without us noticing it. We do not know how much sand is contained inside the clock. And it is not me, or the meaning I mean to say, that you should live as though there was no sand in that clock. That is not what I'm saying. I want to inspire you to live fully. To first find what fills your heart with joy, and then seek to fill your life with that, so that your heart may forever be full of joy. Over the last couple of years, especially these last couple of months, I have had a shift in the way that I write things down in my journal. I have this imaginary picture of a wine glass. Not because I'm a fan of wine, but because I just love the image of that wine glass. And in my journal, I describe the things that fill that cup, fill it with joy. For my writing, fills it with inspiration, with the desire to tell stories. And I imagine that cup. And I ask myself what fills it and what drains it. It is through this alchemy of imaginary images and words that I've come to find this system. The system of realizing that writing does indeed drain from my cup. But all I need to fill it again is to experience, to live, to spend time with those I care for most, to witness things with them, to experience stories, to consume media. That fills the cup for me. And writing empties it. In a good way. I was talking about finding what fills your heart with joy. And to me, that interplay, those two opposing elements, filling the cup of inspiration and emptying it, these are the two halves of a yin and yang, the cycle that makes me very happy. Experiencing things with my wife, with my friends, watching things with them, conversing about stories, consuming media, fills me with inspiration. And writing uses it. Over years, I discovered that. I am able to put it to words now because I thought about it. I thought about it lots. I studied myself. I searched through the things that made me unhappy and the things that made me overjoyed. You should do that too. I cannot tell you what makes you happy because everyone is different. I assume that if you're listening to a podcast about writing, then most certainly writing must be a part of joy for you. One of the ways with how you fill your heart. I have been thinking a lot about this. Hearts and emptiness. Finding joy. and averting despair. I've been thinking about it because I've met a lot of people recently. Old friends, old acquaintances. People who I knew years ago and have found that they have not really changed since then. And that's not inherently a bad thing. But I saw in them the same things that bothered them back then. It was strange and sad. All this time had passed and they were still trying to fill their hearts with something that didn't bring them joy. A job that didn't make them happy. A relationship that meant nothing to them anymore. Grudges, lies, old things that happened decades ago that still haunt them. I want to inspire you, dear Rudderly friend, because I know we've come a long way. I wanted to take you across the long journey, but I realized that a shortcut was best. Dear Writerly friend, are you meant to be a writer? To me, that question matters not. Do you want to be a writer? That's a little better. But instead, I have one more. One even more scarier than the two. Does writing bring you joy? Do you love to tell stories? Because if so, you should tell stories. You should write. You should do those things. Not because you're meant to do them, but rather because it fills you with joy. And to spend life doing anything but that would be a waste. There you go. I am putting my pen down. That's the most writerly thing to say. Writers don't do mic drops. Writers just put their pens down. Oh, I got so real there. And I hate it because I was talking about anime earlier this episode, which means that a good percentage of the people listening just checked out. Maybe I'll edit that out. I don't know. I spoke very crimsonly just now. Not about the anime stuff, about the life stuff. And I know that it's hard. And I know that life is not easy. And I know that even when we have the best of intentions, things sometimes don't work out. I know that. I mean, you know too. But at the end of everything, and I know I'm going to give you one last real thing, okay? I'm going to slide one more of those under the door. It's a classic. It's an oldie. It's a goodie. It's the kind of things that you learn talking with older people, talking with old friends. Nobody finds themselves at their deathbed wishing that they had worked more, wishing that they had put in more overtime at the office. In their deathbed, people find themselves longing for something to have filled that emptiness. You realize, after living for so long, that life was not about what you thought, and there was more to life. And you long for that something that filled your heart. It is never too late. As I've mentioned before, life is short. Learn from others. Learn from their mistakes. The first time I heard that story, I told myself, I will not let that happen to me. That's the wake-up call right there. And I've been doing my best to fill my heart, to fill that cup, and to put words on the page. Okay? I hope this inspires you to do the same. I want to be done with this question, if anything, because the podcast is already going longer, and I wanted this one to be a concise episode. But to heck with all that, there's one more thing. There's one more thing I need to slide under the door. Because I know that someone out there is yelling at me. Someone out there is saying, well, that's some nice ideal you got there, Max. Sure hoped I could live like that. Sometimes we have pressure in our life. We have social expectations. Things are sometimes expected of us. I just want to say that your life is yours to live. And you must decide what means the most to you. Fulfilling the wishes of someone else or filling your heart. If you can find the happy medium where everyone can be satisfied, then that's perfect. That's the ideal. I'll just tell you now, I've known dear friends who have listened to the same conversation just standing a couple feet away from me, who realized that the path they were on was not the right one. I had a friend whose parents wanted him to be a doctor, but he did not want to do that. And he realized that. And he knew, he started it, he hated every moment of it, and he realized that if he kept going down that road, he would hate himself so much, and he would hate his parents so much, that he would end up eventually bringing great harm to somebody. Probably himself. And he realized that it was better to live with that disappointment than not at all. You have to do what's best for you. I would rather your parents go a little disappointed than you spending your life in misery. That's just me, though. What do I know? All right. I am going to scooch away from this point. I got so real. I mean, that's what you signed up for, though. That's what you signed up for. I'm going to make that the title of this podcast so that everyone knows what they're signing up for. Welcome back to writing advice that sounds just like life advice. Now, see, I planned this. This was all part of my master plan. I knew that if I talked about titles first, we would be at such a mood that the prompt would not be able to happen. So now, I'm going to put on my clown nose, lighten up things a little, and let's talk about what makes a good title for a novel. So as you remember recently, I was talking about The Catcher in the Rye, because I finally read it. Now I know what you're thinking. Max, you just recently read The Catcher in the Rye? I'm like, yeah, I moved to the US at the age of 13. I don't know how you think the immigration of the United States of America works, but you don't just, arrive and they hand you a bag of books. I wish. That would be way better. Let me tell you, the United States immigration system is not like that at all. That would have been super sweet, though. No, I read a lot of Maya Angelou in high school. That's what all my teachers gave me. I liked it. It was good stuff. But I never read The Catcher in the Rye, and I read it recently. And I had my thoughts that are recorded on this podcast. If you're binge listening to this podcast, you already know. But the thing is that I mentioned that I really didn't like the title for The Catcher in the Rye. And someone wanted me to extrapolate. A dear viewer reached out to me and said, Max, if you didn't like the title for that book, then what makes a good title? And you know me, I love it when it sounds like a challenge. So here we go. The title for your story, much like the cover for your novel, are ultimately the face of your product. I know that we all want to believe that a novel is not judged by its cover, but that is not true. We make assumptions like that, faulty assumptions like that, every single day. That's why the title for your story, just like the cover as well, is very important. At the end of the day, the purpose of a title is to grab the attention of their reader. That's the purpose. I think that is the purpose of the title. Some titles can achieve that and still be ineffective titles. I think The Catcher in the Rye achieves being an eye-catching symbol. I mean, it's got the word catch in there, so, it might have caught some people's attention. But is it a good title? An effective title has got to catch your eye. Has got to be interesting in some way. It has got to be interesting in some way or another. So that if someone sees it by just scanning the spines of the books, they can go, ooh, that looks interesting. The best titles, though, are the ones that marry not only that function, but also the connection to the novel. Titles that make sense. Titles that give you a sense of wonder. Titles that make you interested in the story. And titles that ultimately, yes, connect to the plot. A good title is the kind of title that when you finish the novel, you go, I see what you did there. Or sometimes not at the end, but somewhere along the journey you realize, that's what the title means. And that's how it connects. Now, I don't want to just start breaking down different categories of titles because I don't want you to look at them as patterns. But there are ways in which you can make the title for a story very exciting. I just realized I'm talking about story titles and Kendra's probably listening. So here we go. Time to inadvertently put one of my own friends on blast. Hey Kendra, I love you. Don't be mad. I mean, I'm not mad at you because you have done a bad title. I'm not mad at you at all. It's just my friend Kendra. Just titles. And it's not even that she writes bad titles. She just doesn't title her stories at all. I love you, Kendra. You're the best. We gotta work on your titles, though. So, this one. Okay, I'm like pointing up. I'm like looking at the stands. Like I'm gonna do a home run. Okay. I've never seen baseball. Is that how it works? I was gonna say I've never seen basketball because I just don't know anything about sports. There are titles. Some of my favorite titles are titles that are a phrase that shows up in the story. A phrase that comes up time and time again and ultimately develops through the story. That is some of my favorite stuff. I keep wanting to call them bangers. I'm like, that's a good banger right there. Like it's almost like a good slogan for an ad or something. That's usually what's ultimately what titles are. They're a kind of marketing thing. And when you find a really good title that kind of marries all the elements together, you go, chef's kiss, chef's kiss. So, titles that are a phrase that shows up in a story. Titles that are the name of a character are also pretty interesting. That leaves you with a little bit of a mystery as to who the heck is this person. Other titles that I really enjoy are titles that are a cryptic statement that makes, or a cryptic noun or element that is intrinsic to that story that doesn't make sense unless you have actually read the story. The Catcher in the Rye kind of falls along those lines, except it doesn't actually stick the landing. If you have read The Catcher in the Rye, that shows up once at around page 210 out of 240. It never comes back up ever again. It's never mentioned. That's not a good title. Did not stick the landing. 0 points. Looking over to the Russian judge, 0 points as well. That's what happens. Now, this could not be an M. Karen trademark answer if I didn't realize halfway through the answer, hey, if you're writing your novel for the first time right now, ignore everything I'm saying. Don't even think about it. Don't even start solidifying this title for your story right now when you're on chapter 2. Don't do that. That's silly. I don't want to say you're wasting your time, but what I want to say is that you have not finished writing the story. You have no scope for what the story is about. It's no good. Stop. Don't do that. Again, the purpose of a title is to grab the reader's attention or the buyer's attention when they're walking down the aisle or scrolling through Amazon or whatever website you have your book on. You want them to look at the title and go, huh? Or alternatively, go, wait, what? That's also a good one. But at least, yes, that's the purpose of a title. That's what it does. I am willing to concede that your title doesn't have to fully connect with your story. It doesn't have to. I would like you to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to finish your novel and I'm going to go, the title didn't really connect with anything. And yes, I don't know if you can hear it, my cat is snoring in the background. But I will concede that yes, a title needs only be interesting and to grab the attention of a buyer, of a reader. I understand that. But if you have the ability to pick your own title, depending on whether you're doing traditional or indie publishing, you may or may not have the ability to pick the title for your novel. If you do have the power to do that, I want to inspire you to think, to analyze, and to create a title that is not only a grabbing, that brings questions to the reader, but that it also resonates with the story. If you want a quick mental form, okay, here you go, okay? Here's my two-step process for a title, okay? Checkmark box number 1. Does it grab the attention of a reader? Checkmark box number 2. Does it resonate with the story? There you go. You don't need to get both, but if you do, I think you got yourself a pretty good title right there. All right, I went really long on that one. I meant to go way shorter, but then I realized that I was basically putting one of my friends on... I was going to say on roast, but that makes it sound like we're actually cooking instead of actually, roasting someone. Hey, Kendra, I love you. Don't feel bad. We'll help you come up with titles, okay? It's fine. And there we go. Short and sweet. I hope that these 2 questions helped. Remember that they are ultimately my advice, my opinion on what has worked for me. I know things got a little real back there. And I really do hope that I was of some help. The questions I brought are huge questions. Things that may take you years to figure out for yourself. What I ultimately want to say is that it's okay if it takes you time to figure out what you want to do. It takes a long time to be able to weigh the options. At some points in our lives, we look over those terrifying choices and we think to ourselves, there's no way I could ever do something that my parents would disapprove of. I could never do that. I could never become a writer. But then time changes you, and you realize that life is indeed pretty short, and you might as well fill your life with joy. Okay? Okay. All right. Max, why did you go back to it? I just wanted to get that off my chest. This is my podcast. My rules. I do what I want. You know what else we're going to do? We are going to move over to the final segment of the show, the prompt. Every week, I bring you a weird, strange, bizarre prompt. An exercise for you to think about writing. To think about your stories. To analyze the prompt. Oh, I think you can hear my cat snoring in the background. It's adorable. But anyhow. If you are working on a project at this moment, guess what? You're not allowed to write this one. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules. I just follow them. But you are allowed to think about this story. To imagine what you would do. To stretch your creative muscles. And if you're watching on YouTube, consider leaving a comment letting us how you would have tackled this story. And if you have the time to work on it, consider making something, even if it's just a little short story. Have fun. Create. And if you do, let me know about it. I may want to read it. All right. Continuing with the trend of prompts that Max just found laying about while living. Today I have a scenario for you. You may bring your own characters into it. You can just drag and drop your characters if you want. Alternatively, I'll just give you some general descriptions. I'm not explaining nothing. I'm not telling you nothing. We're just jumping right in. This podcast has been long enough today as it is. I want you to imagine a central character. Gender, age, none of that stuff matters. Imagine them how you may. You may even grab one of your own characters. That's fine by me. This main character is visiting a friend at their own place. I imagine them being young, that kind of age. I'm thinking middle school, high school. And they're visiting a friend, They arrive through the doors. I'm picturing a big house, but it doesn't have to be. It can be an apartment. They come in, they put their backpacks on the floor. This is not the first time that our main character has come to visit their friend. I want you to keep that in mind. As a matter of fact, our main character and their friend have known each other for quite a long time. You could even say that our protagonist spends almost as much time in that house than they do at their own house. I am picturing the kind of recurring appearance where our main character might even have plates and mugs or something that is theirs that just resides in that house. When their friends' parents make dinner, they lay down the plate that somehow ended up belonging to our main character. Going to that place is not new to them. Going to that place is special and fun, but it's not new. Again, our main character is visiting a friend after school. It could also be, again, I have to just slide this in, it could be college, they could be co-workers. The possibilities are endless, but I'm just telling you as I picture it. I imagine the friend and their very small family. I'm actually picturing friend, younger sibling, and one parent. You pick which one. That sound in the background, by the way, it's my chinchillas. Don't mind them, they're adorable. There's plenty of sunlight. It's time for them to get up and play. Main character, sitting at the dinner table. There is one unit of parents in the room, probably serving food. I imagine the best friend and the best friend's younger sibling. I imagine that our character has come here so often and so much that having dinner with them is just normal. Our main character might as well be part of the family. Our main character spends so much time there that it's gotten to this point where the parent doesn't even ask them if they want a drink. They just get them the drink that they know they like. And they just serve things in the way they know they like it. This familiarity that is special and meaningful. It is great to find a place where you are welcomed and wanted. And our main character has found it here in this other house. And life, if anything, has been getting by them. Moving fast, changing. Depending on what you're doing with the character, maybe their life is changing rapidly. Maybe there is some great change just around the corner. College, new jobs, marriage, who knows? I want you to take this moment and slow down. This dinner. A tiny table, a long one in a great house. Maybe they're all having dinner in the living room with TV dinner trays, or just holding the plates in their hands. Sitting on the countertop. A familiar dinner is happening with this makeshift family. And then, out of a door in the house, a door that our main character has probably seen open and close 1,000 times. Or maybe this is the very first time they have spotted this door. if that door is real or not, if that door was there all along or not, does not matter. You pick that, not me. But out of that door emerges another character who looks a little bit like the best friend, but a bit older. 5 years older, 10 years older. They walk down the hall, confident, comfortable. I picture them with a towel on their head as though they're drying their hair, like they just came out of the shower. Definitely wearing clothes. I'm imagining pajamas. Drying their hair. This person, this stranger, walks into the kitchen, serves themselves a plate, and sits down. Our main character is stunned. Our main character has no idea who this stranger is. And our main character is alone. The rest of the family, the makeshift family, the best friend, the parent, the younger sibling, none of them bat an eyelash. None of them behave as though anything weird is happening. In fact, they interact with this new person, with this stranger, like it's business as usual. I imagine a remark from the parent saying something along the lines of, "Wow, you're late for once. You're usually the first at the table." I imagine the younger sibling saying something along the lines of, "Hey, when are you gonna get to help me do that thing or that thing? I need some help with my homework." And I imagine the best friend, like siblings do, cutting the younger one off and saying something along the lines of, oh, they're always busy. Also, they really should help me first with my homework." A stranger. A stranger everyone appears to be treating or taking rather well. And yet here is our protagonist, caught in this strange situation. I want you to slow down, focus the camera on them. What is it like for a stranger to enter a familiar place? What is it like to suddenly discover that a friend you have known, a family that you have lived with for years now, supposedly has a member you have never, ever heard of or seen? What is it like for a new agent, a new element to be injected into a place you knew before? A sudden change, like a glitch in some system. A new person who suddenly exists, whose history does not align with yours, whose memory does not align with yours. What would it be like to be this person? To be this teenager, this adult, this man, this woman, this person? As they look to one end of the room, the table, the kitchen, the counter, and they find a stranger. This stranger turns to look at our character and stares. What does this mean? What would it be to live through that moment? What would you do? What would you do if you tackled this story? The plot twists are simple. The execution complicated. Are they really a sibling? Or has some stranger injected themselves into this reality? Or maybe, just maybe, the truth is stranger than anything we could have imagined. And so, welcome back to episode 33 of OMAKASE. I have been your host, Max, also known as M. Karen. I hope that today's episode was fun. I hope our real conversation was, if anything, a reminder that life should be about joy. In life, we have responsibilities and duties, and that is important. But you must not forget about joy. About filling the cup. About finding what makes you happy, what helps you get up in the morning, and have as much of that as possible. Thank you. If you have really enjoyed this episode, if you really enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on iTunes. My wife told me to write this note here. Honestly, I love making this show, and I do agree with her that I should do everything in my power to make sure the podcast continues to grow. So, for now, I am going to... There you go. That's scratched off the list of things I have to do today. I am gonna wrap up this episode by giving a shout out to every single one of my patrons pledging $1 and up, and anyone else who treats me to a cup of coffee. There haven't been any new cups this week, but that's fine. I'm gonna slide over to the end of the video club. If you're here for the writing advice and not my silliness, you are free to go. You are free to go. Class is dismissed. All I want to say is that I hope that between now and the next time we meet, that you spent some time filling your heart, filling your cup, and writing some words. And so, welcome back to the end of the video club. I'm your host, I'm Karen. Let's give a shout out to every single lovely person pledging $1 and up over at my Patreon page. Don't mind me stepping over my own words. See, I don't mind it when people step on my toes. I step on them all the time. Wordplay! Hey guys, how y'all doing? This episode was way too real, so I'm gonna inject some extra silliness into this episode. I realized I put on my clown nose and I never even used it. Haggle, haggle. And so, let's begin with the silliness. Starting with, in alphabetical order, A. Howard, Alexel Hoshi, Alistair Baywood. I have to charge the Baywood. I have to charge it like I'm playing a video game. It's like Alistair Baywood. Oh, that totally redlined. Redlined being a slang or a technical term for when a microphone goes into the red, which means it sounds bad. I'm keeping it in though. No edits. No edits. That is the rule for the end of the video club. Alex Cast, Elisa Dudley, Amanda Stevens, Amelia, Angela, Biting the Sun, Blarg. I also have to charge Blarg. Brenda, C.E. Richards, Caitlin, Kathy Lindsay, Christine Dennis, Kristen Lofton, Clem Pastor, Connor, Eleanor, Erasos, Joffrey Raby, Heather is writing. Hero song. Yeah, Heather, I saw your comment. I saw your comment on that other video I made. And listen. I don't care about Metroid. I don't care about Star Fox. I don't care about Yoshi. Nobody cares about Yoshi. I don't care about The Legend of Zelda. Give me... I'm knocking on Nintendo's door right now. Give me Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing is the only thing of value that Nintendo has ever made. Come at me. Alright. Animal Crossing is the only thing of value that Nintendo has ever made. Come at me. I am not re-recording this line. I don't do edits. I just wanted to say it again. You know what? I'm gonna say it one more time so that you can get a nice clean edit. I might even take the music out so that you can hear it. You can just paste it on all of your reaction videos. Animal Crossing is the only thing of value that Nintendo has ever made. Fight me. Good. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Irina Phoenix, James, Janosch Hebatsky, J. Tana Kirkwood. I'm putting my hands in my pockets because I'm not allowed to do any edits during this. Janosch Hebatsky, J. Tana Kirkwood, Jeffrey James Williams, Jay Sawicki, Juan Nunes, K.M. Anderson, Kalmeshwar Rao Shaluri. Someday I will find out how to pronounce that name. Kaylee, Kiel, Lacey. I was doing a little bit of a country cover of my Lacey shoutout. Lacey. Lier Killo. Lishadra. Mary Foster Smith. Nicola. Nicole Grissom. Nicolay. Noam Sahar. You really gotta bring out the Sahar from like the back of your throat. Novels and Tomes. Pat Eichson. Polycraftor. Raquel Fernandez. Renee Solia. No confidence. Rhiannon August. Rival Moonlight. Roa. Shimmer Tales. Sky D. White. Soul Muse. Soul Muse. I'm doing like head movements like you can see me. Sylvia. Lytilla. Synexia. And, wait for it. Wendy Christopher. You know what I just did? I did the take, like I'm in some sort of like true crime show, and like the detectives have all like stormed my place, and I'm like, I didn't do it. You want to know who did it? Lean a little closer. Suddenly I'm in my deathbed now, and I'm like, hey, you know what? You want to know who did it? Wendy Christopher. And then the cops go, what? Commissioner Wendy Christopher did it? I can't believe it. What? Okay, guys, I have a new idea for a YouTube channel, okay? It is reaction videos of cops reacting to verdicts, or like to, reacting to, what's that thing? When the cop puts someone in the room and talks to them. Or when cops get the confession, like, or detectives get the confession, and the person goes like, that's right, I did it. I stole all the money, and then just like the camera focuses on the detectives, and they go, what? The culprit admitted to 10 accounts of murder, but then you won't believe what really dropped the detective's jaw. So yeah, keep an eye out for my next YouTube channel, cops reacting to things. Anyhow, see. This is how you know there will never be a script for these videos, because that right there just it's just such joy, such nonsense. Hey guys, I'm like doing a little dance. Hey guys, welcome to the end of the video club. I'm your host, I'm Karen. Today's episode was serious. I hope that maybe sorry I stepped away for a second. This episode was a little serious, but I hope that, again, if anything, I was good company during your ride. I want this podcast to be a place where you can find inspiration, but I feel this call in me to pass along the lessons that I have learned, because I would very much rather you do not stumble like my friends have, like I have. Okay? Okay. I hope I was good company. And I hope that if anything, I showed you my point of view. Take care. Until we meet again, and remember, today is a good day to write.